Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today we are looking at ethics and professionalism part 2. Remember, we've done a previous video where we looked at introduction to ethics and professionalism, and then today we are going into part 2 of that. So this is for all the grade 11s and grade 12s out there. Stay tuned. I'm the general and this is the masterclass. Right, first off, we start by looking at our exam guideline. Like I always say, guys, the exam guideline is the most important thing when you are studying. You must check it before you start, and then after you are done studying the topic, you must also go through it as a checklist to check what you have covered and what you may not have covered thoroughly. So let's look at it. Number one, you must be able to explain how businesses can apply the King Code principles of transparency, accountability, and responsibility. Identify the following types of unethical business practices from given scenarios. Explain how the above mentioned types of unethical business practices pose challenges to businesses. Recommend solutions or ways in which businesses could deal with those unethical business practices. Identify types of unprofessional business practices from given scenarios or statements. Explain how those types of unprofessional business practices pose challenges to businesses. Recommend or suggest ways in which businesses could deal with the above mentioned types of unprofessional business practices. So let's start off by looking at the King Code. What is the King Code, you may be asking yourself? So years ago, there was a guy called Henry King who came up with this concept of what can be used to measure the standard of how ethical a business is. So he came up with several important points, and they came to be known as the King Code principles. And for the purposes of the exam in grade 12, we only look at three such principles. They are the measure of how ethical a business is. Number one, transparency. Regular audits must be done to determine the effectiveness of the business. So, by the way, in the exam, what we're expected to do is to explain the application. How can a business apply the principle of transparency? So here we are saying that there must be regular audits. The business must be open to being audited, because to be transparent is to be open. That means there is nothing to hide. Everything is above board. So the business is open to having audits because everything is clear. Number two, audit and other reports must be accurate and available to shareholders or workers. So again, in the principle of transparency, which is being open, there is no information that will be restricted to any stakeholders, be they employers, be it the government, SARS, or even the public at large. All information that is reasonably required will be provided by the business if they are holding up to this ethical standard of transparency. Number three, stakeholders should be aware of employment policies. So to avoid any hint of corruption or bribery or any rumors, the best way is all the employment policies, including how somebody may be promoted, the employment statistics of the company, should be open to everybody. Because once you start hiding it, then you have reduced the degree of transparency there, and there may be something fishy. So to uphold transparency, all employment procedures must be open to all the stakeholders. Then we look at the second one, number two, liability, which is also called accountability sometimes. So most of you know this one as accountability. What are we talking about when we say accountability? How can a business apply it? Number one, internal and external auditors must audit financial statements. So by the way, what is to be accountable, guys? To be accountable is to be responsible, is to be answerable. So we are saying a business through its directors must be answerable to its stakeholders. For example, the shareholders who have put in money into the business, they need to know what is happening, and they have a right to receive these reports, and these reports must be checked and accurate. So the directors of the business have a responsibility to account through financial statements to the shareholders. That's what we mean. And by the way, these must be audited. To be audited means they are checked by other people who are independent of the business or outside of the business. Number two, regular communication between management and stakeholders, e.g. the shareholders. So there must be regular communication in the interest of accountability, in the interest of being answerable. You have to account and give information. This is what we did in the 3 months leading up to this month, and we have been able to achieve this. We have not been able to achieve this. Stakeholders must not find out information on their own. If something happens, good or bad, it is the responsibility of the business to report it first to its stakeholders, and then they have to deal with whatever consequences will come from that. Number three, businesses must be accountable for decisions and actions. So if the directors or the leadership, the management of a business has taken a particular decision, and that decision has led to some good things, maybe higher profitability for the business, they will be rewarded with bonuses because we can account that increase in profitability to their actions. However, the downside is if they take an action and that action results to the detriment of the business, then heads must roll. Somebody must take accountability. Somebody must take the fall for what has happened. They must answer, and it may result in even losing their jobs and so on. Let's go over to number three, which is responsibility. What do we mean by responsibility? Now, remember that under accountability, we have already used the word responsibility there. We have said to be accountable is to be responsible for your decisions. So when we're talking responsibility, we're talking a different type of responsibility now. What are we looking at? We are looking at the three P's: profit, people, and the planet. And we are saying a responsible business does not only focus on profit, it also focuses on the planet and also focuses on the people, which is the community. So responsibility is about the other two P's apart from profit. Let's go and look at it. Number one, programs must protect communities. Who are the communities? The communities are the people. Starting with the employees that work inside the business, they must be treated properly, they must be well paid, they must be treated according to their rights. Then we go outside of the business and protect the communities by not polluting the environment, by giving them safe products that are not hazardous to their health, and also by involving ourselves in community projects, CSI projects that are going to benefit the community, donate goods, build schools, develop roads, and so on. This is what the business can do to show responsibility. Number two, programs must protect the environment, e.g., to reduce air and water pollution. So the first one was about communities, which is people. The second one is about the planet, which is the environment. So the business has a responsibility. A responsible business will be seen by how it takes care of the environment. The processes of the business must not adversely impact on the environment through pollution or cutting down of trees or carbon emissions, but they must rather do something to reverse the effect of the pollution they may have done in the past and also contribute to the general health of the environment. Hi guys, sorry to disturb your video. I'm just here to discuss with you 3 ways in which you can support the channel. Number 1 is to watch the ads. So guys, the ads that come before the video, during the video, and after the video are linked to this particular video that you are watching. If you don't skip the ads and you actually watch, we're going to be rewarded by the advertisers. Then number 2 is to invite me as a guest speaker to your event at your school, a school function, prize giving day, revision classes, and so on. I'll gladly come. Number 3, we've got the Masterclass Level Up program, which is designed for all those who want to write their exams in May and June of 2025. We are covering 3 subjects: accounting, business studies, and economics. All the information you need is in the description box below. Now let's get back to the video. Okay, now we move on to a very important aspect of this topic, which is commonly assessed in exams. This is application, where you are given a scenario or a statement and you have to identify a particular business practice as unethical or unprofessional, and then you explain it, and then you give the challenge that it causes in the business, and then you also give a recommendation. Let's start with unprofessional business practices. The number 1 type of unprofessional business practice, well, we look at 3. Number 1 is sexual harassment. What do we mean by sexual harassment? An example that you may find in a scenario or in a statement is managers promise employees promotion if they agree to sexual favors. So you can see the link. Once you see this in your exam, it could be in a scenario or in a statement, then you know the type of unprofessional business practice here is sexual harassment. And explanation: sexual harassment causes discomfort, humiliation, and hinders work. So obviously, if somebody is sexually harassed, they cannot participate in the workplace to their fullest because obviously there are emotional issues. They may have to stay away from work because they don't want to be in that environment. Then strategy to deal with it: implement internal complaints and disciplinary procedures. So every business must, before anything has happened, every business must have policies on these matters. There must be a way or a method, a procedure of reporting sexual harassment, which is known by everybody, that is available, and there must be non-disciplinary procedures that somebody will go through if ever they are accused of sexual harassment. Number two, formulate a policy regarding sexual harassment. So you can actually put this policy into a chart of some sort that you put in the offices so that all employees are exposed to this information about sexual harassment and the consequences that can come from it. Then we look at type number two: unauthorized use of workplace funds or resources. What is the example? Staff who download music and movies with the work's internet. So some of you are guilty of this. You have done this at your parents' workplace, at your own workplace. You have downloaded your personal things with the Wi-Fi of the business. That is unprofessional. So if you see that in a scenario, you know that is an unprofessional business practice. Then what is the explanation? Fraud increases the cost of doing business. So whenever, so this is not only workplace resources, it's also workplace resources and workplace funds. So some people misuse the company card, the company car, they use it for their own personal business. And we call that fraud. And we are saying fraud increases the cost of doing business because there are all these expenses that mount up that should not be there, but employees are busy taking some of the company resources for themselves. Then what is the strategy to deal with it? Perform audits. So there must be regular audits to check if everything is going on well. There must be specific people. That is number two. Limit the number of employees who have access to assets. There must be certain people, a limited number of people who've got access to the assets of the business, to the bank account, to the car. Not everybody should just take the asset of the business and do as they please. Number three, abuse of work hours. Example, make personal calls during work hours. Again, a lot of people do this. They don't know that this is unprofessional. It's not allowed to make your personal calls during work time and even to be doing your own things on Facebook and so forth. Not only are you abusing the resources, but you're also abusing the time because that is paid time at work for you to be doing your duties. Then the explanation of that is businesses can lose customers if deadlines are not met because the consequence of people not using their work time properly, they take extended lunch breaks, they go out as they please, then they're not going to meet their deadlines, and then the business is not going to match the orders and so on, and they may end up losing customers. What is the strategy to deal with this? Talk directly to employees. So go straight to those employees. Don't say some of you are doing this. Go straight to those employees who are involved in that practice and explain to them what they are doing, what it means, and what consequences they may face for that. And also draw up a code of conduct. So a code of conduct, remember we spoke about it under professionalism. It's very important. It states what can be done and what cannot be done and what are the consequences where that code of conduct is not followed properly. So you take your people, your employees, you take them through orientation about the code of conduct so that everybody knows what is expected of them. Now we move on to unethical business practices. We also have three types. Number one, dishonest advertising. We discussed this in our previous video. What is an example of this? To advertise second-hand goods as new. So there is misrepresentation of information here. What would be the explanation? Misleading statements in advertisements leading to misrepresentation of the product concerned. So once this has been done, it means customers have been deceived into thinking a product is what it is not, or it can do certain things which it is not proven to do. Then what is the strategy to deal with this? Number one, consumers need to report it. So there are advertising standards. In fact, there's a regulator called the Advertising Standards Authority here in South Africa, and it is responsible for making sure that there is no dishonest advertising. If customers feel that such has happened, they can report this to the Advertising Standards Authority, and the business may face consequences if they are found guilty of this. Number two, prices of goods in rural areas. What are we talking about? Example, inflation of food prices because there are few suppliers in remote areas. So it often happens, to many people's surprise, that goods in rural areas may end up more expensive than in urban areas. Can you believe it? How does this work? This is because most of these big businesses or production houses, they are found within urban areas. That's where their factories are. And now, if the goods have to be taken to a rural area, there is a huge transportation cost and a risk of damage of those goods while being transported. So it actually increases the cost of these goods because they will take that transport cost and put it on top of the retail cost. And then when it reaches the customer in the rural areas, it's much more expensive than it would have been in the urban areas. What is the explanation here? To ask higher prices for goods of inferior quality in rural areas. So if the goods are not matching the price, then there is a mismatch there. And this is being done to people in rural areas who can even be seen as economically vulnerable. Then what is the strategy to deal with this? Number one, work with suppliers to share delivery costs to remote rural areas. So businesses should negotiate with their suppliers, with their service providers, and say, look, there is an additional cost of taking these goods there. Can you help us to bear this cost? Let's share that cost so that we don't have to increase the prices for the people in rural areas. Number three, tax evasion. This could be the most important one. What is an example of this? Falsification of financial records to show less income. So some businesses do this. They try to reduce in the financial statements the income they have made so that they can be charged less tax. How would you explain this in an exam? Many businesses and individuals do not declare all their income to SARS. So they leave some of the information which may lead to increasing their income. They deliberately do this as a way of trying to cheat SARS, that is evading tax, running away from paying tax. Now, what is the strategy to deal with this? Submit all tax returns. This must be done on time. It must be done properly. Submit all tax returns that are due to SARS with the right information, and when you are asked to pay, you pay your tax as a responsible corporate citizen. Number two, businesses must pay the correct amount to SARS. Don't cut corners. Don't let anybody tell you that there is a way we can do this and that. Always pay your tax to SARS. Thank you so much for watching the video up to this point. Thank you for 5,000 subscribers. We are on the road to 10,000 subscribers by the beginning of May. If you have not subscribed, I would like to encourage you to consider subscribing. Share this information, the links in the groups at school and wherever else you may have your colleagues. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. God bless you.